Hello everyone, today we will study your chapter number 1 from your textbook Hornbill, The Portrait of a Lady by Ch.1. In the present chapter, the author has given an account of his grandmother. He draws a lifelike portrait of his grandmother. She is very old, her face was wrinkled, her hairs was white. It was hard to believe that she was once young and pretty. Mm, and his grandfather's picture is also hanging above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. Uh, he wore a big turban, his clothes were loose, he looked at least 100 years old, and it was hard to believe that he had once a wife or children. Kushwan Singh's grandmother was a short lady. She was fat and slightly bent. She could not walk straight. She hobbled about the house. This is what the a brief description which the author has given when the chapter begins. Um, in the uh, in the other, she had a rosary. In one hand, she has a rosary. She was always telling the beats of a rosary. Her lips constantly moved in prayer. She put on white clothes. Mm, and further in the story, the author says he and his grandmother were good friends. His parents went to city. They left him with her in the village. She took good care of him. She used to wake him up in the morning. She got him ready for school. She said her morning prayers in a monotonous tone. She hoped that he would learn this prayer by heart. She had already washed and plastered it with yellow chalk. She would take an earthen ink pot and um, she would give him a thick stale chapati and with little butter and sugar spread on it for the breakfast. Mm, his grandmother always went to school with him. The school was attached to the temple. The priest taught children the alphabet in the morning prayer. The children sat in 2 rows in the veranda. The grandmother sat inside the temple. She would read holy books. Meantime, the author was there in the temple. The and further in the story, twist came uh, when the narrator's parents sent for them in the city. It was a turning point in their relationship. They shared the same room. Now they are in town. They are in a city. But grandmother no longer went to school with him. The narrator started going to an English school in a motor bus. There were no dogs in the street, so grandmother took to feed the sparrows. Years rolled by. They saw less of each other. Sometimes she would ask him what the teacher had taught him. She did not believe in things that were taught in the English school. She was unhappy. She did not like English or science. She felt sad that there were no teaching about God and Scripture. The narrator one day told her that they were giving uh, music lessons. She was disturbed. She thought music quite indecent. And the narrator went to university. Further in the story, the narrator went to this university. He was given a room for his own. The common link of friendship was broken between the two. The grandmother accepted her loneliness uh, without any objection. She was always busy with her spinning wheel and reciting prayers and feeding the sparrows. Um, mm, the narrator decided to further in the story. The narrator decided to go abroad for higher studies. He was to remain away for 5 years. The grandmother was very sad. She could die any moment. The narrator was worried. Um, but her mind was lost in prayers. The narrator, and after 5 years, the narrator returned home from abroad. His grandmother met him at the station. She did not look a day older. She did not speak anything. She held him in her arms. She went on reciting her prayers. And later in the chapter, um, she collected the women of the neighborhood. She got an old drum. She continued thumping the old drum for several hours. She started singing. She danced. She sang of homecoming of a warrior. They had to persuade her to stop. The family members persuaded her to stop and take rest, but she refused. It was for the first time that she had forgotten to pray. The next morning, she fell ill. She had a mild fever. She told them that her end was near. She realized that she had forgotten to pray. She didn't want to talk, and she ignored their request. She lay peacefully in bed. She was praying and telling the beads of her rosary. Her face looked pale, um, and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers, and she died. She was laid on the ground. She was covered with red shawl. Arrangements for her funeral was being made. In the evening, the sun was setting. They brought a wooden structure. They stopped halfway in the courtyard. Thousands of sparrows sat near her dead body. They did not trip. Everyone felt sorry for the birds. The narrator's mother brought some bread. She broke it into little crumbs. She threw these crumbs, in the veranda for the sparrows. The bird took no notice of them. Then they carried her dead body outside. The sparrows also flew away quietly. The crumbs of bread still remained lying there in the courtyard. And evidently, the sparrows had not come to mourn the death of grandmother. And later, the next morning, the sweeper came and swept away all those breadcrumbs which were lying in the veranda. So, this is what the story is. I hope the chapter is clear to you. Thank you.